Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Captain Podcast. Today's episode addresses a recent tragedy, the crash of Air India Flight 171, involving a Boeing 787. Our hearts go out to the victims and their families during this incredibly difficult time. In this episode, we'll be discussing the preliminary data available surrounding the incident, acknowledging that the final official crash report has yet to be released. We're joined today by an airline professional who is always tuned in to the latest developments in aviation safety. Her insights will help us navigate the early findings of this tragedy with the professionalism and respect it deserves.
So let's start trying to understand this terrible event. What are the basic facts we have so far about Flight 171?
Well, okay, so June 12th, 2025, Air India 171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner.
Great.
It took off from Ahmedabad SVPI Airport, heading for London Gatwick.
And the crash happened almost immediately.
Yeah, tragically fast, within about 30 seconds of takeoff.
And the human cost, just awful. Can you outline the scale of that on the plane and on the ground too? It's just heartbreaking. 242 people on the aircraft. That's 230 passengers, 12 crew.
Okay.
And only one person survived. The plane then crashed into a hostel building, BJ Medical College, about 2 kilometers away.
Oh, wow.
And tragically, 19 people in the building were also killed. So the total death toll reached 260. It's India's worst air disaster in about 10 years.
Just devastating. And this involved a Boeing 787. That aircraft type it had a stellar safety record, didn't it?
It really did. That's one of the big shocks here. This was actually the very first fatal accident involving a 787 Dreamliner since it entered service back in 2011.
Over a decade.
Exactly. A spotless record until now. This specific plane, tail number VTANB, was about 11 years old. It had clocked up over 41,000 flight hours.
So well-used aircraft.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a workhorse. Nearly 8,000 cycles, so 8,000 takeoffs and landings. But Air India did state it, had known serious issues before this flight. Clean maintenance history, apparently.
Okay, so it gets airborne.
Yeah.
And then what happened in those brief moments? What's the initial data telling us?
Right, so takeoff was from runway 23 at 1:38 p.m. local time. Almost straight after getting airborne, the crew declared a mayday.
A mayday call. What did they report?
They reported a loss of power or thrust. That was it. ATC confirmed that was the last they heard from the flight.
And the flight path? That initial data must be critical. How high did it actually get?
Very low. The preliminary transponder data, I saw this on Flight Radar, suggests it only reached about 625 feet above the ground.
625 feet. That's nothing really for a jetliner taking off.
Exactly. And there's CCTV footage confirming it was only in the air for like 30 to 50 seconds before it started coming down.
And something else seemed odd, didn't it? The landing gear.
Yeah, that's right. The gear was still down, which is, unusual that long after takeoff. It just couldn't seem to build speed or climb properly before it fell.
And the crash site itself. What was found there? And critically, the black boxes.
Okay, so the impact. The plane hit the hostel building nose up, apparently, and almost wings level. It exploded, huge fireball, caught on video.
Right.
The whole thing, from breaks off to impact, was incredibly short, maybe 33 seconds. The aircraft was, as you'd expect, severely fragmented.
And the recorders. FDR, CVR.
Yes, thankfully recovered very quickly. One was actually found on the hostel roof.
Right.
I read on Reuters that the flight data recorder, the FDR, its data has been successfully downloaded. That's being analyzed now with help from the NTSB from the U.S.
Yeah.
The cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, was damaged by the fire, but they're hopeful they'll get usable audio. But, and this is key, none of that data is public yet. It's all very preliminary.
Understood. So the crucial question, the one everyone's asking, why? Early signs point to losing thrust on both engines. But how? How could both engines on a modern plane like a 787 just quit at the same time?
That is the absolute core of the investigation. Because, a 787 is certified, it's designed to climb safely even if one engine fails.
All right.
So losing both right after takeoff is extremely rare, extremely serious, and probably the biggest single clue we have so far is the ram air turbine, the RAT.
The RAT. Okay, what exactly is that and why is its deployment so significant here?
Okay, so the RAT, think of it like a small emergency windmill. It pops out automatically, but only if all the main power sources fail.
Like both engines quitting or a total electrical failure.
Exactly. It's the last line of defense for basic power. And there's witness video and audio. People saw it extended under the plane and heard this distinct high-pitched whine.
The sound of the RAT spinning.
Precisely. Experts quoted on, I think it was NDTV, said this strongly suggests the aircraft lost all normal engine power and electrical generation right after takeoff.
So the array deploying really narrows things down then.
It does. It points heavily towards, well, a few possibilities. Both engines did fail, or there was a massive electrical system failure, maybe even a total hydraulic failure, though engine failure seems more likely given the power loss report. The sort of consensus building now, just based on these early clues, seems to be focusing on that dual loss of engine thrust. But why that happened? Maybe an underlying electrical issue or something with the fuel control system.
So it might not be two separate engine problems, but one thing causing both to fail.
That seems increasingly likely. We're probably looking for a systemic failure, something affecting both engines or maybe the plane's whole electrical system. You know, the 787 is very complex, very integrated. It forces investigators to look beyond just, say, a mechanical part failing on one engine. They have to look at the digital systems too.
Right. So if dual engine failure is the main theory, what specific causes are they looking into?
A few key areas. One big one is fuel. Could it have been contaminated fuel or maybe a problem with the fuel delivery system getting fuel to the engines? They're testing samples, checking the refueling records very carefully.
Makes sense.
Another major avenue is electrical or software failure. The 787 relies heavily on electrical systems and software for engine control. It's a more electric aircraft. So it's theoretically possible that a single electrical fault or maybe a software glitch could have commanded both engines to, say, idle or shut down.
Simultaneously.
Yeah. And the fact that witnesses and perhaps the early data suggests there was no significant yaw, the plane didn't swing to one side like you'd expect if just one engine failed.
Right.
That really bolsters the idea of some kind of single failure point causing both engines to quit together. Almost like a, well, some pilots are calling it a digital shutdown.
What about other possibilities? Pilot error? Sabotage? Are those still being considered?
Look, the investigation has to be thorough, check every angle, but right now the preliminary signs don't really point towards pilot error being the main cause.
Why not?
Well, things like the gear being down or maybe flaps not set right. There were rumors, analysts generally agreed those wouldn't cause such a complete inability to climb if at least one engine was providing thrust. The loss of performance was just too drastic.
Okay. And foul play?
Anti-terrorism teams were involved initially, standard procedure, but officials have said pretty clearly that they haven't found any evidence of explosives or sabotage so far. The focus seems very much on a technical failure, but again, I have to stress this is all based on preliminary info. Nothing is official yet.
Understood. It's an international incident, too, with the plane, the destination.
Yeah.
How does the investigation work officially?
So India's AIE, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, is leading it. But because it's a Boeing plane with GE engines and heading to the UK,
Right.
the US NTSB and the UK's AAIB are heavily involved too. Reports say the collaboration is very good between all parties.
I mean, what about immediate actions? Did Air India or the regulators do anything straight away?
Yes, definitely. India's regulator, the DGCA, and Air India moved pretty quickly. Air India grounded its entire 787 fleet for special safety checks.
The whole fleet.
For checks, yeah. Reuters reported that 26 out of their 33 Dreamliners were inspected and cleared relatively quickly, but they also cut back their wide-body flight schedule by about 15% for a few weeks to manage these checks. They even checked their 777s, too, just to be extra cautious.
And the impact on Boeing. This is significant for them, ending that perfect 787 SACE streak.
Oh, absolutely. It's a definite blow to the 787's reputation. Boeing's stock price dipped maybe 5% or so right after the crash, according to Financial News.
Mm-hmm.
They sent technical teams immediately to help the investigation, of course, and they're watching very closely for any signs of a wider fleet issue. But importantly, unlike the 737 MX situation years ago, there hasn't been a global grounding of all 787s.
So what's the timeline now? When might we get more solid information?
Well, a preliminary factual report is expected around July 11th. That should lay out the basic known facts, maybe confirm the thrust loss, but it won't give a probable cause.
Not the why yet.
No, not yet. The full final report. That usually takes many months, sometimes over a year. Although Indian authorities have hinted they want to expedite it, maybe to around 3 months, which would be very fast.
That would be quick.
Yeah. And there's also a parliamentary review on aviation safety scheduled for July 9th, where this crash will certainly be discussed.
So even with what we know, there are still huge unanswered questions, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. The biggest is the exact root cause of that power loss. Was it the fuel, software, some bizarre double mechanical failure? We just don't know for sure yet.
And the sequence. Did they fail at the exact same microsecond, or was there a slight delay?
Exactly. That's crucial. And the CVR audio, when we get it, will be vital. What did the pilots say? What warnings did they get in those final desperate seconds?
And then there's the sole survivor. Just incredible. What more can you tell us about that?
It really is astonishing. A 40-year-old British citizen. He was sitting in seat 11A, an overwing exit row. He somehow escaped with non-life-threatening injuries. His account is obviously critical. He reported hearing a loud noise right after takeoff.
A loud noise.
Yeah, and seeing red and blue lights, which experts think were probably the emergency lights, powered by that RAT we talked about.
Wow.
The investigation will definitely look at why he survived, his seat location, what was that noise. His testimony could be incredibly valuable, maybe even for future safety improvements.
Absolutely. And thinking about it from the pilot's perspective, I mean, what do you even do? Both engines gone, 600 feet off the ground.
It's the nightmare scenario. Honestly, the options are almost zero at that point. You're too low, too slow to turn back.
Just no time, no altitude.
No. It's a stark, sobering reminder for every pilot about takeoff briefings. Knowing your emergency procedures instantly your memory items. Even though most procedures assume you still have one engine, this just forces you to confront the truly unthinkable.
As we start to wrap up here, what are some of the other things that make this incident really stand out in the aviation world?
Well, obviously, being the first fatal 787 crash is huge. But also, the specific plane, VTANB, it was such a familiar sight, connecting India globally for years.
Right.
And that grim detail you sometimes see. People magazine mentioned that the survivor's seat, 11A, is now apparently being requested by some passengers as a lucky seat.
Oh, wow.
It's a strange piece of folklore, but also, importantly, the fact that a wider global grounding of the 787 didn't happen is significant. It suggests, at least for now, that investigators haven't found a smoking gun pointing to a design flaw affecting the whole fleet. The disruption was mostly contained to Air India.
It really underlines the constant need for safety vigilance, doesn't it? Even with all this preliminary data. What's a final thought you'd leave us with?
I think it's just that this event has deeply shaken the industry. It shows that even with our most advanced technology, experienced crews, good weather, catastrophic, unexpected failures are still possible.
Yeah.
So while we have to wait for the final answers, it's a powerful reminder that aviation safety isn't a destination, it's a continuous journey. It requires constant learning, constant adaptation, constant vigilance from everyone involved.
That concludes today's episode of the Captain Podcast. Once again, our thoughts are with the families and loved ones of those affected by the tragic loss of Air India Flight 171. We focused on the preliminary information available, but we await the official crash report for a clearer understanding of the events. A special thank you to our expert for sharing her expertise and providing valuable perspective on such a sensitive subject. As more information becomes available, we'll be sure to follow up with future episodes, including a deeper look once the final report is out. If you found this episode valuable, please consider liking and subscribing to show your support. We also welcome your comments and suggestions for future topics. Until next time, fly safe, stay sharp, and we'll catch you on the next episode.